Okay. Shalawama. Shalawama. I'm back. Dr. Yasapa from Zion Law School. This lesson, we're going to discuss Unam Sanctam. Unam Sanctam. That's the topic of this lesson. What's going on with my screen? All right, so let's go. Hold on a second. This lesson, we're going to discuss. All right, give me 1 second. Okay. So this lesson, we're going to do Unam Sanctam. And this is just going to be a reading of Unam Sanctam. Unam Sanctam is a very, very big deal because this is one of the driving documents that the Catholic Church issued that led to the creation of religion and quote unquote slavery, or the whole prisoner of war thing that they call slavery, connotative slavery, okay? So let's get into this. This is going to show you the role of religion in government, how religion affects your life on a day-to-day basis, okay? All right, so let's get into it. We're going to go through this and read through this document. This is found on the official Catholic Church website. This is papal. If you look up here, the highlighted part, papal, hold on, papal encyclicals.net. All right. So papal encyclicals online. All right. So this is Unam Sanctam, one God, one faith, one spiritual authority. One spiritual authority. This is the controlling concept, the driving concept in both religion and politics across the globe. Okay, across the globe. So this papal bull came from Pope Boniface VIII. You can see that in the year 1302 AD. All right. So let's just go ahead and read through it. You should, as a scholar or as a new person just coming into this, you should be very familiar with this document and the other papal bulls that led to our people being put in captivity, being made wards of the state, being made property or bond property, stock property, right? To your current present condition right now, okay? This is where it began. All right, so let's go through it. We'll begin here. Bull of Pope Boniface VIII, promulgated November 18th, 1302. All right, urged by faith. So here we are in the first paragraph. Read along. I don't know how much of this highlighting I'm going to do, okay, but try to read along with me. Or if you're not reading, just listen. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through each of the papal bulls that have to do with us, the House of Yasharallah. Okay, each that has to do with the House of Yasharallah, I'm going to go through them all. So if you know your nationality, if you're Yasharallah, if you're a Moor, if you're a indigenous person, these documents are of great interest to you. Okay, so urged by faith, we are obligated to believe and to maintain that the church is one, holy, Catholic, and also apostolic. Apostolic. Keywords here you want to look up the etymology for is church. Okay, church. Holy, look that up in Hebrew. Church, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. Okay, look these words up, get their etymological meanings. It'll give you much more or greater understanding of what we're reading here. So let's begin. Urged by faith. So what is the basis of this? Faith. What is faith? What is faith? Okay, look that up. What is faith? Faith. So urged by faith, this is the motivation of this entire document, correct? Urged by faith. Faith is not trust. You look up the biblical meaning of faith in the New Testament, it will open your eyes. Okay, urged by faith, we are obliged to believe. Okay, see, you're talking about faith and belief, right? Faith and belief. We are obliged to believe and to maintain. What does it mean by maintain? Look this word up. And to maintain. Okay, and to maintain. Well, we should know that it includes force, right? Even killing people. We are obliged to believe and to maintain that the church is one, holy, Catholic, and also apostolic. We believe in her firmly, and we confess with simplicity that outside of her, there is neither salvation nor remission of sins. As to the spouse, in the Canticles, it's in square brackets, it's SGS 6:8, proclaims. So here we are, let's read it. One is my dove, my perfect one. She is the only one, the chosen of her who bore her. And she represents one soul, mystical body. She represents one soul, mystical body, whose head is Christ. And the head of the Christ is the capital God, citing 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3. Okay, so this is the basis of this. In her, that is the church, then is one, capital Lord, one faith, one baptism, quoting Ephesians verse 4, verse 5. There has been at the time of the deluge only one ark of Noah, prefiguring the one church, which ark, having been finished to a single cubit, had only one pilot and guide, i.e. Noah, or who was Noah. And we read that outside of this ark, all that subsisted on the earth was destroyed. What can we learn from this first paragraph? First, we learn that the basis, the scriptural citations, come from the New Testament, right? Comes from the New Testament, okay? There is, in fact, no Mosaic law covenant in this paragraph. So this is not based upon the law covenant. I hope everybody can see that. It is not based upon the law covenant that was given to Moses with its, in other words, the 10 Commandments or the Decalogue, with its terms of the contract, the blessings, and the curses, correct? Not mentioned in this first paragraph. It is not present. Okay, so it has nothing to do with that, but what does it have to do with? In review, it has to do with faith and belief and using force or any means necessary, including death, to what? Push the agenda of the Catholic Church, right? Okay, so this is where we're at. What else happened in this paragraph? What else happened in the paragraph? They're using the Noah story to demonstrate or to illustrate, right, that the church is in fact Noah, and that salvation comes through the church, as we can see. Let's go back here. It says, It says, we believe. Now, remember, this is a belief. And confess. They're telling it publicly, their belief. This is what you think, right? What you feel and what you think, what you expect and hope. Belief. In her, that's the church, firmly. See, they believe in the church firmly. And they confess with simplicity that outside of the church, there is neither salvation. So outside of the church, there is no salvation. That means that the Mosaic covenant means nothing. It's the church that means everything. Nor is remission of sins. Okay? So the Mosaic law has absolutely nothing to do with this. In other words, the church completely replaced the Mosaic covenant, and the story of Noah is the basis. The story of Noah is the basis for their rationale for saying the church is now the leader, because Noah's role on the ark. So what is your opinion about this? Is this sound reasoning? Is this sound reasoning in your opinion? Or is this sketchy, right? Are they reaching, okay? Does Noah have anything to do with the Mosaic covenant? Or does who drove the boat? Does who drove the boat and who built the boat have anything to do with the Mosaic covenant? Is there any contract associated with the house of Yasharallah for their redemption? The answer is no, right? The answer is no. Okay, so let's continue. Let's continue, okay? So you see, this is altogether something new. Altogether something new. It is not the old or the Mosaic covenant. All right. So let's continue to the next paragraph. We venerate this church as one. What does venerate mean? This one we'll look up. Let's look up venerate. So all of you, all who are still involved in church, okay, it says regard with great respect, revere, and then the similar or synonyms, revere, reverence, worship, adulate, deify, adulate, worship, reverence. Reverence, what's the meaning of reverence? Okay, as a noun, deep respect for someone or something. Okay, admiration. Okay, veneration, we just looked at that. Homage. Okay, love. Now let's go to the verb. As a verb, reverence means regard or treat with deep respect. Okay, now I don't think we need to look up what worship means, right? Worship is pretty clear, right? Here's worship, the feeling or expression of reverence or adoration for a deity. Y'all see that? So this is what you're doing. Now, if you look up the etymology of church, you'll see that it's actually a deity. Okay, it's actually a deity. But anyway, let's continue. Okay, so we venerate. Let's use more clear English. We worship, we venerate, we adore, we have deep respect, deep regard for this church as one. The capital L-O-R-D, having said by the mouth of the prophet, deliver, O capital G-O-D, my soul from the sword and my only one from the hand of the dog. Quoting from Psalms 21:20. He has prayed for his soul. That is for himself, heart and body. And this body, that is to say the church, he has called one because of the unity of spouse, of the faith, of the sacraments, and of the charity of the church. This is the tonic of the capital Lord, the seamless tunic, which was not rent, but which was cast by lot. Quoting from John 19:23 and 24. Therefore, of the one and only church, there is one body and one head, not two heads like a monster. This is Christ and the vicar of Christ. The vicar of Christ is the Pope. The vicar of Christ is the Pope. Look that up. Well, let me look it up for you. All right. Let's look this up so you can understand what's going on. This is saying that the Pope and the Christ are one. Let's see how it looks. Vicar of Christ, the original notion of a vicar is an earthly representative of Christ. All right. But it is also used in the sense of a person acting as a parish priest in the place of the Christ. All right. So here we are. Let's continue. Let's continue. Okay. So let's go here and review this, okay? So that it's understood by all. Okay, so they are worshiping the church, venerating the church, having deep respect for the church, doing work or service for the church. This is all work and deep respect, all falling under worship, okay? The capital LRD, having said by the mouth of the prophet. So now here is the basis, more justification or more rationale of what they're going to do, okay, for their belief. All right, so let's continue. The LORD said by the mouth of the prophet, deliver, O capital God, my soul from the sword, and my only one from the hand of the dog. Okay, next, he prayed for his soul, that is for himself, heart and body. And this body, that is to say, the church. All right, so they're saying that the psalmist prayed for a body, and that body is the body of the church. Do you agree with that? Use your own analytical thinking. Go back and read Psalms 21, the whole verse, and make your own decision as to if this is talking about the church. Okay, is it talking about the church? Is it? You need to answer this question for yourself. Go back and read it so that you can understand this document. Not only understand the document, but you can also understand its points of manipulation or things that are not true. Okay. All right. So let's read Psalms 21:20 again. He has prayed for his soul, that is for himself, heart and body. So who is he? Is he the church, as the Catholics or as this papal bull is saying? And this body, that is to say the church, right? That is to say the church. So they're trying to plant the church in scripture. You need to see for your own self if this is the case or not, right? So go ahead, go back and read it, okay? And if you want to do even better for yourself, come to the Curses course on Saturday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we can take a look at this in the original language to determine what it says in the Ibaryath or the Hebrew, and to see if the English rendering is accurate, okay? If you really want to do right by yourself, come to class 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday, and I will show you this, okay? You know for yourself. This is extremely important. Let's continue. He has called one because of the unity of the spouse, of the faith, of the sacraments, and of the charity of the church. Okay, all right. This is the tunic of the LORD, the seamless tunic, which was not rent, but which was cast by lot. That's John 19:23 and 24. Therefore, of the one and only church, there is one body and one head, not two heads like a monster, that is Christ and the vicar of Christ, Peter and the successor of Peter. Since the capital LRD, speaking to Peter himself, said, feed my sheep, John 21:17, meaning my sheep in general, not these nor those in particular, whence we understand that he entrusted all to him, that is Peter. So let's look at what this is saying. The Christ figure said, feed my sheep. Okay. Now we look at this analytically. Feed my sheep would mean what? It could mean the sheep who were present at that moment, not the sheep who would be here after Peter's death. Everybody see that? So in other words, the sheep or Christ followers or people, feed them. But when Peter's dead, those sheep are also dead. No more sheep. What the church is saying here, let's go through it again. Where is it at? Oh, okay. Okay, so since the capital LRD, speaking to Peter himself, said, feed my sheep. This is John 21:17, meaning my sheep in general. See? So now they're mixing past, they're mixing present tense or present time with future time or future tense, okay? Meaning my sheep in general, whether they're alive when the Christ figure was alive or whether they were not yet born. Everybody see that? Everybody see it? Okay. So the Pope is saying that this feed my sheep didn't only apply to the sheep when the Christ figure was alive, but those who were yet to be born. Okay, this is important. All right. So feed my sheep, meaning my sheep in general, not these. See, these would be those who were present at that time. Okay, nor those in particular. So not a special group who were alive at that time, right? All right. Whence we understand he entrusted all to him or Peter. So that's all who were born at that time and who were yet to be born. Therefore, if the Greeks or others should say that they are not confided to Peter and to his successors, they must confess not being the sheep of Christ. Did y'all hear that? Let's say it again. Therefore, or for this reason, right? If the Greeks or others should say that they are not confided to Peter, okay, and to his successors, who is Peter in their eyes? The first pope. Their successors would be the future popes not yet born. They must confess not being sheep of Christ. So in other words, if you're not submitting to the Pope's authority, you are not the sheep of Christ, regardless of what era of time you were born in, okay? Why? Since our capital LORD says in John, there is no, I'm sorry, we repeat that. Since our capital LORD says in John, there is one sheepfold and one shepherd. We are informed by the text of the Gospels that in this church and in its power are two swords. Oh, two swords. Two swords. But before we get to these swords, let's go back and take a look at this. Therefore, if the Greeks or others, Greeks would be what? These are foreigners to the house of Yasharallah, right? Who are the others? Foreigners to the house of Yasharallah. Maybe it includes the house of Yasharallah. It's what? It's a general word, right? So you have to look at the context. Therefore, if the Greeks or others should say that they are not confided to Peter and to his successors, they must confess not being the sheep of Christ. Now, this is important. If you are not the sheep of the Christ, remember, back in that first paragraph, they said they're going to maintain the church as one. Okay, so you should expect some consequences and some penalties, right? That's what this is getting at. Okay, so here, let's go back. They must confess not being the sheep of Christ. See, they confess it and they're going to accept or have to deal with the consequences of not being the sheep of Christ. Since our capital Lord says in John, there is one sheepfold, okay? There's only one sheepfold. You're either in or you're out. Was that sheepfold alive during the Christ figure's lifetime when he did his ministry? Or is that sheepfold including those who were alive then and those who were yet to be born? This is what the deal is, right? Peter and his successors, one sheepfold, those alive then and those who were yet to be born. If you're not in that Christ fold, you're going to have trouble, according to this document. And historically, it proved they did what they actually said they would do. All right, so there is one sheepfold and one shepherd. Who is the shepherd? The Christ figure. Who is the shepherd on earth? The Pope. The Pope is a representative of the Christ figure acting on behalf of the Christ figure on earth. So do what the Pope says, because in effect, the Pope is the Christ. Okay. Next sentence. We are informed by the text of the Gospels that this church and its power are two swords, namely the spiritual and the temporal. Temporal. Okay, everybody should know what this is so you can understand what the text is going to talk about from this point forward. Temporal, relating to worldly as opposed to spiritual affairs. Okay, so it is the opposite of spiritual. It is earthly, worldly. Okay, so now you should understand what we're reading now. There are two swords. One sword is spiritual, one sword is non-spiritual, earthly, fleshly. Okay, that's what it's saying, two swords. For when the apostle says, behold, here are two swords, quoting Luke 22, verse 38. That is to say, in the church, since the apostles were speaking, the capital Lord did not reply that there were too many, but sufficient. Certainly, the one who denies that the temporal sword is in the power of Peter, that the earthly, fleshly sword is in the power of Peter and his successors, that the earthly sword, the battle weapons, the ability to kill is in the power of Peter and his successors, the popes of Rome. The power to wage war is in the popes of Rome. Okay, according to this understanding of the gospel, understand this. Okay, this temporal sword is in the power of Peter, has not listened well to the word of the capital Lord. Let's read it again. Certainly the one who denies that the power to wage war, to kill on earth is in the power of the popes. If you deny that, is what? Proof that you have not listened well to the word, that is the gospel, right? The word of the Lord commanding, put up thy sword into thy scabbard. Matthew 26:52. Both therefore are in the power of the church. That means that your relationship with the deity is in the power of the church, and whether you're going to live or die is in the power of the church, meaning whether you're going to be murdered, whether there will be war on earth is in the power of the church, both swords. That is to say, the spiritual and the material sword. But the former is to be administered for the church. Okay, the former would be what? The spiritual. But the latter by the church. Let's read it again. But the former is to be administered for the church, but the latter by the church. Okay, so the church is still holding the power and everything is for the benefit and for the advancement of the church. I hope y'all see that. But let's do it again. Let's do it again. Certainly the one who denies that the temporal sword is the power of Peter, that is the Pope, the power to wage war, to murder, to kill, okay? If anybody denies that power, what does it say here? If they deny that the power is in Peter or the Pope, that person has not listened well. In other words, he doesn't understand, right? He didn't listen to what was told to him. He didn't listen well to the word of the capital L-O-R-D commanding, put up thy sword into thy scabbard. Both, therefore, are in the power of the church. That is to say, the spiritual and the material sword, but the former is to be administered for the church, but the latter by the church. Okay, so let me show y'all what this means whenever you see former and latter. All right, so here you are. Okay. So the terms former and latter are words used to distinguish between two things. Former directs us to the first of these two things, and latter directs us to the second or the last of the two things, okay? So that's how you deal with that whenever you see former and latter. So for clarity, let's go ahead and do it. So what's the former? Where is it at? Okay, so it says, but the former is to be administered for the church. So what's the first thing? It was spiritual, right? The first thing was spiritual. The second thing is what? Earthly, fleshly, temporal, okay? So that is to be administered what? By the church. So this is why we can say the church can wage war, can kill people, okay? Because the church is wielding that sword, that temporal sword, okay? All right. But the spirituality is supposed to be for the church. That's to benefit the church, not you, not you. It's to benefit. The spirituality is for the church, not you. The sword is for you if you don't accept these things. I hope that's clear. All right. The former in the hands of the priest. See, the spirituality is in the hands of the priest, right? To benefit the church. The latter by the hands of the kings and the soldiers. So the fleshly sword to wage war, to kill you, to wage war, is in the hands of the monarchy, the kings and the armies. But at the will and sufferance of the priest. So in other words, boss man is the priest. Boss man is the priest, right? And by extension, the priest is also a form of a vicar of Christ in the area, in the territory where he has governing authority, right? He answers to the Pope. So the Pope is in control of the kings and the armies. The Pope has an ultimate decision maker, ultimate right to wage war or to kill somebody. All right, so this should be well understood. All right, next paragraph. However, one sword ought to be subordinated to the other, and temporal authority, subjected to spiritual power. Let's say that again. However, one sword ought to be subordinated to the other and temporal authority. What is this temporal authority? Temporal authority is what? The kings of the earth, the government of the earth, right? All right. So one sword has to be more powerful, or there, in other words, there's a hierarchy. One sword has more power than the other. One sword commands the other, okay? And then the earthly powers, the governments on the earth are what? Subjected to spiritual power. So in the hierarchy, the church has ultimate power, and then the governments are under the church, okay? That's what that's saying. All right. And then, of course, the popes and the priests, they exercise the ultimate authority, which is spiritual power. And the spiritual power is over, of course, the power of the fleshly sword or the temporal sword. Okay, that's the hierarchy. Let's continue. For since the apostle said, there is no power except from capital G-O-D, and the things that are ordained from capital G-O-D, quoting Romans 13, 1 and 2. But they would not be ordained if one sword were not subordinated to the other, and if the inferior one, as it were not led upwards by the other. So in other words, the earthly, the fleshly needs to be lifted upward, right? The deity in the sky upward spiritually. This is the rationale, right? Y'all see the rationale for all of this stuff. Sketchy, right? Very sketchy, and it really doesn't make any sense when you look at it contextually. If you look at it scripturally, this is nonsense. But this is still driving politics and industry today, okay? Whether you realize it or not. All right, let's do it again. There is no power except from capital G-O-D and the things that are ordained of capital G-O-D. Citing Romans 13, 1 and 2. But they would not be ordained. Notice that, but they would not be ordained if one sword were not subordinated to the other, and if the inferior one, as it were not led upward by the other. So let's continue to our last paragraph. For according to the blessed Dionysius, it is a law of the divinity. Now, is this in the Mosaic covenant? Okay, let's read through it and see. Okay, is this in the law, in the Mosaic law? Okay, let's start again. For according to the blessed Dionysius, it is a law of the divinity that the lowest things reach the highest place by intermediaries. So what is this divinity? What is this law of divinity that they're basing this? It's not Mosaic law, right? Not Mosaic law. So it would have to be what? Some pagan form of worship or something in nature that's being deified, right? But definitely not the Mosaic law. Okay, so again, you make your own decisions about this. Use your own analytical mind and develop the practice and become comfortable with being analytical and comfortable with the decisions that you reach, okay? All right, we have to develop it through use, okay? All right, it is a law of divinity that the lowest things reach the highest place by intermediaries. Who's an intermediary? The church, right? We just read it up here. Then, according to the order of the universe, so now here is natural law, right? Here is natural law. Everybody see that? Natural law. Then, according to the order of the universe, that means the laws that govern the universe, okay? According to the laws that govern the universe, or natural law, all things are not led back to order equally and immediately, but the lowest by the intermediary and the inferior by the superior. I would sure like to know what law this is, what natural law. If anybody knows what this natural law is that they're referring to, can you leave me a message? Also, drop a comment in the comment section and let me know what you think. And also, if you have information to add to this, put it in the comment section, okay? Because I also want to learn. Everybody has a unique perspective, and you probably know something that I don't know. So put it in the comment section. You might know something that might help somebody else, or you may have a question or a comment that might help somebody else. So make sure you comment in the comment section. Also, like and subscribe this video if you're learning something, right? All right, but if you've been here this long, you're learning and you're enjoying. So like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's read it again. Then according to the order of the universe, all things are not led back to order equally and immediately. Here's a problem with this. All things are not led back to order. Okay, so this is saying that things were at one time in order, right? But now they're not in order. And there is an effort to lead them back into order. See, we're thinking analytically, okay? So is this true? Were all things at one time in order? And now is there a natural force in the universe that are leading things back into order? Is that the case? Is that what you see in your life? Let's continue. All things are not led back to order equally and immediately. This is what they're saying. So some things, so everything started out in order and then they got out of order, but now they're being led back to order. But some are being led back to order slower than others. Some are being led back to order faster than others, right? See, equally and immediately. Some it may be happening now, right? Some it might happen in the future. Some it might have happened already. This is what's being said here, okay? Equally and immediately. But the lowest by the intermediary. The lowest would be what? The temporal, the earthly sword, the fleshly sword, the right to wage war, so the right to kill, right? The lowest, so that would be the earthly, the fleshly, the kings, the governments, the armies, right? The weapons, okay? But the lowest by the intermediary, who's the intermediary? Well, the church, the popes, right? The popes, and by extension, their priests. And the inferior by the superior. Inferior would be the kings, the governments, the armies, and their agents, right? The superior is a spiritual, the church, the popes, the priests. Hence, we must recognize the more clearly that spiritual power surpasses in dignity and in nobility. These are the elites, elitism, okay? Spiritual power surpasses in dignity and in nobility any temporal power whatever. The popes and the priests have more dignity and more nobility than any king, than any government, than any army, than any army officer, okay? That's what that just said. Let's continue. Okay, as spiritual things surpass the temporal, right? Remember, the spiritual things are for the church. Okay, that sword is for the church. The second sword, or the earthly sword, is to be used by the church, right? They use it. In other words, they tell the governments and the armies what to do. See, this is so if you thought your government or your president was running the show or your army was running the show, you see by this doctrine, by this document, you are completely wrong. It's the popes running the show, the church. All right, this we see very clearly also by the payment, benediction, consecration of the tithe. So this is the tax, right? This is the tax. Consecration of the tithes by the acceptance of power itself and by the government even of things. Okay, so now the church is tithing you, right? Or taxing you, and the governments have accepted that they're going to offer a tax too and give it to the church. By the acceptance of the power itself and by the government even of things. All right, so for with truth as our witness, it belongs to spiritual power to establish the terrestrial or earthly power and to pass judgment if it has not been good. Y'all see that? So the church can punish the governments. That would include the armies, right? If it is not, what is good? Whatever they say it is. Okay, good is whatever the church says it is, whatever the Pope says it is, whatever the priest says it is, that is good. All right. So thus is accomplished the prophecy of Jeremiah concerning the church and the ecclesiastical power. Behold, today I have placed you over nations and over kingdoms and the rest. Therefore, if the terrestrial power err, it will be judged by the spiritual power. In other words, governments and armies can't do anything to the church, but the church can do something to them, right? But if a minor spiritual error, it will be judged by a superior spiritual power. But if the highest power of all err, it can be judged only by capital G-O-D and not by man. So in other words, the priest is judged by the Pope, and the Pope is judged by capital G-O-D, and the buck stops there. You can't touch him. The armies and the governments can't do anything to a priest or a church. Now, doesn't that make sense? Don't we see that in history with what's been happening over the years since the exposés about pedophilia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, child murders by the Catholic Church? Nothing. The governments have done nothing to them, basically nothing, right? All right. So let's continue. All right, so where are we at? Okay, so it can be judged by the GOD. So here we are, and not by man. See, it has to be judged by capital. The Pope has to be judged by capital GOD, not by any man, according to the testimony of the apostle. The spiritual man judgeth of all things, and he himself is judged by no man. Spiritual man in this case, there, according to this document, is the priest and the Pope. Okay, that's 1 Corinthians 2, verse 15. This authority, however, though it has been given to man and is exercised by man, is not human, but rather divine, granted to Peter by a divine word, and reaffirmed to him, that is Peter, and his successors by one whom Peter confessed. The capital Lord says to Peter himself, whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound also in heaven, etc., citing Matthew 16:19. Therefore, whoever resists this power, that is the power of the Pope and the priest, thus ordained by capital G-O-D, resists the ordinance of capital G-O-D. That's quoting or citing Romans chapter 13:2. Unless he invent like Manichaeus two beginnings, which is false and judged by us heretical, since according to the testimony of Moses, they finally mentioned Moses, according to the testimony of Moses, it is not the beginnings, but in the beginning that capital G-O-D created heaven and earth, citing Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Furthermore, we that is the church, declare, we proclaim, we define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman pontiff. Whoa, that's deep. Furthermore, we declare, legal term, we proclaim, legal term, or law, right? This is talking legalities, right? We define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation, for redemption, that every human creature be subject to the Roman pontiff. Y'all hear that? This is where you get into your birth certificate, right? Chattel slavery, 14th Amendment citizenship, right? The efforts to kill off all representative types of government. So this is in other words, this is the administrative state. This is the basis for the administrative state, right? The ens legis, right? The ens legis and all of this, our Moorish brothers and sisters know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to go and learn this information, okay? This is the ens legis. Some people call it the straw man, okay? This is the admiralty, right? The basis of the admiralty. All of this is coming from here, that birth certificate and other types of contracts, hidden contracts, right? That make people chattel slaves or make people stock, 14th Amendment stock. And this is true all over the world, right? With the Western nations. So there you have it. This is Unam Sanctum. I hope that you learned a lot and that you now understand what Unam Sanctum is, because we hear this thrown around all the time. This affects your life more than you know. Every little area of your life, this affects you, even at the level of local or municipal politics, right? This is what this is driving it all. All right, so that said, I'm going to close this video out. I appreciate you for being here with me, and I'll see you on the next video. I'm going to do remember, I'm going to do these papal bulls. I'm going to do each of them that affect us as a people, okay? So stay tuned. You'll get the next papal bull maybe tomorrow, maybe later tonight, right? Depends on how I feel, but I'm going to do them so that you will have an understanding of them. You need to understand these papal bulls so that you can better understand what? You can better understand the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments. You can better understand the blessings and the curses. You can better understand all of these documents that have to do with us, and it'll help you return to the Most High. All right. So Shalawama, House of Yasharala. I'm Dr. Yasapa. Subscribe, share, like the video. Also, make sure you go and enroll in our new self-study course, 101 Ancient Ibaryath. Okay, 101 Ancient Ibaryath. Go to zionlawschool.org. It's $1 right now for 1 day. So $1 holla for 1 day. There are 113 lessons. You can take as many lessons as you can for $1. So it's basically free. If you want to enroll or subscribe, it's only $10 per month. Only. It's basically free. The course is phenomenal. You're going to want to keep this course for years. Trust me. It has everything I taught in the free live online 8-week course. All of that stuff, I digitized it. I added so much more new stuff. So there are word studies, 250 vocabulary words. Everything is digitized. It's colorful. There's so much information. You can learn it at home at your own pace. You can study whenever you want, right? You no longer have to come to a live class, all right? So go get that. Go get that. Depending on the response, well, it's my desire, our desire, to keep this course almost free. to keep it almost free, but we need your support to do that. So support our work, even if you don't have time to take the course right now, enroll anyway, because the more people who enroll, we'll be able to keep this course almost free, right? So that people who may have a financial hardship, or people who are poor, or people who may have a big family, right? They can't afford to come to a live class, okay? They can just learn online, $10 a month, okay? So help us out this way, right? Make sure you buy our books. You see the many books we have. Go to zionlawschool.org. Support what we do, because this takes a lot of effort, a lot of work, and it costs money to do this stuff, okay? It really costs money to do this stuff. And to make it really, really nice, there needs to be more money invested, okay? So we can get more information out to you, better, more beautiful, higher quality, right? So, all right. So even if you cannot take the course this month or even next month, go ahead and enroll now, right? So we can continue to do this, all right? Because we're going to take a look at the enrollment, and if we have enough people, we'll keep it, you know, just $10. But if we need to, or if we have to raise the price, right? The price will have to be raised. So because it's expensive to do this. I think everybody understands that. So I'm doing my part by making it almost free. So y'all do y'all part. Act as a nation, not as an individual. If you don't like me, or something happened between us in the past that you don't like, overlook it and get the course anyway, right? Act as a nation. You can see by the work that I'm putting out, that we're putting out, that this work is being done, okay? So personalities and conflicts, don't let that stand in the way, okay? Let's act as a nation, as a unified nation, not as individuals and, you know, you hurt my feelings and I hurt your feelings, or I don't like you. We'll always be losers, okay? So we got bigger fish to fry. So this course, 101 Ancient Ibaryath, is absolutely priceless. Go to the website and look at it yourself, okay? So do your part, enroll in the course, make a donation, you know, buy the books, enroll in the live course. Let's get the work done, okay? It's not about me, it's not about you, it's about our nation coming together. We got bigger fish to fry than, you know, I don't like you, or you don't like me, or you hurt my feelings, that kind of thing. It's really childish, you know. So let's do it.